Good afternoon, boys and girls. I'm so excited for history today, but let's go ahead and begin by grabbing out your history books and opening to the Gettysburg Address, and stand when you are ready. Great job, row 2, being quick about that. Let's go ahead and recite our Gettysburg Address together. We're just going to say the first 2 paragraphs. Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil battle, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield in that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that this nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. Wonderful job reading with expression. You may have a seat. Well, I want you to look up with me up at our board here. We've been reviewing some states and capitals, so I'm going to say the state and capital, and I want rows 1, 3, and 5 to stand and repeat them after me. Olympia, Washington. Salem, Oregon. Sacramento, California. Phoenix, Arizona. Wonderful expression. As you saw, you may have a seat. These are our coastal states that we have been learning. Washington, Oregon, California, and Arizona. Rows 3 and 5, go ahead and stand. And let's say these, 1, 3, and 5. Let's go ahead and stand and say these ones together. Ready? Begin. Helena, Montana. Helena, Montana. Boise, Idaho. Boise, Idaho. Carson City, Nevada. Carson City, Nevada. Salt Lake City, Utah. Salt Lake City, Utah. Cheyenne, Wyoming. Cheyenne, Wyoming. Wonderful job. Those are our states that are between the East Coast and the West. There were a few that we missed, but that is most of it. Well, today we're going to look at a new state that we haven't looked a whole lot at. If you look with me up at our board, we have a little state down here, and it is in the shape of a boot. Who would have thought it? I want you to remember this state as Louisiana. Class, say Louisiana with me. Louisiana. Wonderful job. Louisiana is the southern state. It's a southern eastern state that borders Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi, and on the south, it borders the Gulf of Mexico. Louisiana is actually known for a lot of its seafood that it produces. It's even known as the crawfish capital of the world because it produces so much seafood. But also, if you notice, borders the Gulf of Mexico. And there's an important river that actually borders the eastern side of Louisiana that can help you remember. If you look with me, we have the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River runs along a lot of states, but down here it comes to Louisiana and it runs right on through and it comes out at the bottom of Louisiana. Louisiana also is important because it has the city of New Orleans. Its capital is Baton Rouge, but an important city is New Orleans, where the Battle of New Orleans took place in the Civil War, like we learned about a couple units ago. This is the battle where Andrew Jackson became very famous. Well, before we jump into our lesson today, let's go ahead and review what we have been learning in our last lesson. I'm going to play a seat contest. So the first person in each row will be keeping score. And as I ask a question, I will say a seat number, and whoever stands and says the answer first, quickest, will get the point. What island in Hawaii is Pearl Harbor located on? Seat 1. Oh, Hawaii. Very good. What country attacked Pearl Harbor? Seat 3. Japan. When was Pearl Harbor attacked by the Japanese? I'm looking for the month, the day, and the year. Seat 4. Ah, nicely done, Samuel. That point goes to your row. December 7th, 1941. How many Americans were killed in the attack on Pearl Harbor? Seat 1. Very good. What day did America declare war on Japan? Again, I'm looking for the month, the day, and the year. Seat 3. Very nicely done, row 2. What other 2 countries declared war on America following the American declaration of war on Japan? Seat 2. Very excellent job. We'll continue that game as we get to the end of our lesson today. But as we have been looking in our history books and we've been learning a lot of sad things that have happened in history, huh? There was really only one happy event that we learned about in our last lesson, and that was Victory in Europe Day, which was May 8th, 1944, which was a really exciting day for a lot of people. But the war is not over yet. America is still at war with Japan. And if you have noticed, a lot of sad things happen during war. War happens because people do not obey God. They disagree with one another, and they think that they should kill each other over what they disagree about. This is not honoring to God. So today in our lesson, I want you to be paying close attention as we are reading. I want you to look for ways that God still showed hope and his faithfulness and his goodness to America during a very hard time. I'm sure you've had a hard time before when you're out on the playground and someone you didn't expect maybe stood up for you. Or maybe that friend that you really don't like gave you a Christmas gift for Christmas and you weren't expecting it all. Well, God does some pretty amazing things in our story today, so I want you to keep your ears tuned. Our first story takes place as Japan refused to surrender. Japan refused to surrender to the United States. Europe had already given up, and everyone else. And so President Roosevelt, who was the American president at the time, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, had a big decision to make. Was he going to continue to let American lives be lost because Japan would refuse to surrender and hundreds of thousands of men were still dying? Or was he going to end this war very quickly? He decided to end the war, and he did that by using the atomic bomb. The first place that the bomb was dropped was on the city of Hiroshima, which is a city in Japan. This was not like a naval base. This was a city where civilians lived, just normal people who were living their lives. This bomb, as you can see, destroyed a lot of people. It wasn't just on impact that it destroyed people. It was on the influence that it had as the radioactive things stayed in the air weeks and months after the bombing took place. Well, you think after this Japan would surrender, right? No, they refused. They continued to fight. And so President Roosevelt had another bomb dropped on the city of Nagasaki. Well, after this bomb happened, Japan realized that America was serious about this. And so they surrendered to America. And this ended the largest war in American history up until this point. We've had lots of large wars like World War I and other battles, but World War II had been involved with Germany and Italy and Russia and America and Japan. It was a big war, and it had just ended. It was an amazing day. However, as the World War came to an end and discoveries started to be made about what had been happening behind closed borders at that time, there was a thing called concentration camps that American soldiers found. This was a place where Jews had been taken in Germany and put in these camps. These camps were terrible conditions where women and men and children were taken and they were given very little food and made to work very hard. In fact, so many of them died because of this camp that it is known as the Holocaust. Over 6 million Jews died in this time frame, known as the Holocaust. Well, as the war came to a close, America came out as the strongest, most powerful nation in the world. This war had united American citizens because we had worked together to win this war. Let's go ahead and read about this. Open up your books to page 234 and begin reading at the second paragraph at the top of the page for me, Jordan. Japan remained the only enemy for the Allies to defeat. She had learned since Pearl Harbor that Americans were hard, courageous fighters. Although the attack on Pearl Harbor had severely damaged the United States Navy in the Pacific, within a year the Navy was ready to do battle once again. The Japanese had suffered much loss during the war, but they refused to surrender. The military leaders of Japan seemed to care little about the Japanese civilians who were being killed on each air raid during and upon their cities, or the thousands of Japanese soldiers who died fighting for their power-hungry leaders. Yet the Allies knew that Japan must surrender if the countries of Asia were to remain free. The United States had to make a difficult decision. The powerful atomic bomb had been invented. Should it be used to bring the war in Japan quickly to an end? On August 6, 1945, an American bomber dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. A few days later, another bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. Both cities were destroyed. The Japanese quickly surrendered. World War II, the largest war in history, had come to an end. After the war, Allied soldiers found German prison camps called concentration camps where men, women, and children had been penned up under horrible conditions with very little food. In Germany and other lands held by Hitler, millions of people had been cruelly massacred, including these numbers were among 7 million Jewish people, as well as many Germans and other people of nationalities. The murder of the Jews and other people became known as the Holocaust. Once again, the United States left the war as the most powerful nation in the world. The war had done much to unite the American people. Everyone had wanted to do his part to aid in the war effort. American women had gone to work in factories to produce weapons and supplies in American soldiers. Americans knew that they had been fighting for a good cause, and their spirit throughout the war was one of unity and patriotism. Wonderful reading. Jordan, thank you for doing that for us. What was the first city that a bomb was dropped on, Samuel? Good thinking. Why did America have to bomb 2 Japanese cities? Vivi? Good listening. And how many Jews were killed during the Holocaust of World War II? Faith? Over 6 million. That's right. Well, as our story continues, there were these certain people that were called American patriots. These American patriots were men who were Japanese living in America at the time. And these Japanese, the Americans wondered if they would fight for the Japanese or if they would side with the Americans and fight for the Americans. And God provided through these men. These Japanese Americans were known as the Nisi. The Nisi were Japanese Americans who fought for America. They were actually the most decorated because they fought the most fiercely and the most bravely than anyone else. They were also the most unlikely warriors. Like I told you, these men were people that God provided to alleviate and to help America in her battle for freedom during World War II. Well, class, that's all the time we have for today on our lesson. We'll continue to read more about that next time. So let's go ahead and review from our class today. On what 2, we'll continue with the seat contest. What 2 cities was the atomic bomb used on, Emily? Very good. Who said these famous, what was the place where the Japanese people were held hostage in terrible conditions? Samuel? The concentration camps. Good. And what was the mass murder of 6 million Jews that Hitler was part of called? Row 1, the Holocaust. Very good. Well, that's all the time we have today. Let's go ahead and close your books and prepare for science.